listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, John Cross.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episode of the After Movie Diner. And tonight, well, I have some chutzpah. I have some gumption. I have what the locals refer to as balls, because I have invited the greatest living songwriter on the planet, TM, to appear on a podcast discussing 90s slasher trilogy, although only one was made in the 90s, the urban legend films. Who would do such a thing? Who would invite the greatest living songwriter to discuss the urban legend trilogy? Well, this man would. I've got the gumption to do it, and the After Movie Diner podcast is the only podcast with the balls to do it. I am talking, of course, about triple threat. Well, he's a septuple threat, really. But we're talking about singer, songwriter, musician, producer, film director, film actor, film writer, long walk newsletter creator, long walkist. He needs no more introduction other than podcast host of the Motown Media Infomercial Podcast. Will you all put it together, whatever it is, for Matt Farley of Motown Media?
Thank you. I'm feeling good, and you don't even think about urban legends when you think about horror trilogies. That doesn't really come to mind. But when you mentioned it, I just lit up.
Yes,
I am pumped. I am ready.
Well, what's funny is I decided to do a slasher season for Horrortober this year on the After Movie Diner. So I immediately started looking around at some interesting slashers that could kind of be put together. We've got an episode that we're potentially doing on proto-slashers, some very early 70s giallo slasher crossovers. We're doing a show on the entire, all the sequels of Silent Night, Deadly Night. So 2 through to 5 or 6, whatever the remake is counted at. We're doing...
one of my favorite movies, by the way.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and we'll hopefully do it justice, sir. But please, if you have any comments on Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, write them in, and we will read them out, of course. Or record something, and I'll play it on the show. We're doing that, and we are doing... I thought, well, we need to have a 90s slasher in there. Obviously, Scream is the most influential. Off the back of it came I Know What You Did Last Summer. And then, more or less, towards the death knell of the 90s slasher, urban legend creeps out there just before the new millennium at the end of 1998. And it kind of became not so much the bronze to the other two's gold and silver, but more the tin. Let's just say. But I do feel like, am I right in saying, Matt, that Scream, when you think 90s slashers, you think Scream, you think I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then you immediately think urban legend. Am I right in that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of prominence, definitely those three. Personally, I'll take urban legends over I Know What You Did Last Summer, big time. Also, I have a soft spot for Teaching Mrs. Tingle. I really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, I have not seen either of those two titles probably since they came out. I did recently rewatch all 4 Scream films because my dear wife Kim had not seen them. She'd seen the first couple, but had not seen the whole franchise. Did not even realize there was a 4th one. So we rewatched those. I have not got round to watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, but it is on the list. Of course, I'm a huge fan of the late 70s, early 80s slasher boom, and even into the late 80s indie straight-to-video stuff. I love all of it, but I feel like 90s slashers just don't get their due, so I thought we should possibly examine some. What do you think? Should we have unlocked the chest that had the Urban Legend trilogy in it, or should we have left it dusty and closed with a possible corpse in it?
I have no regrets whatsoever. I had a grand old time. And one thing, one thing I'm noticing is that in the 90s, I was like, these 90s horror, they just don't have what the 70s and 80s ones had.
Right.
But now, and to some degree, I still feel that way. However, time makes these movies better. I like 90s horror movies much better now than I did in the 90s, which makes me think if I had been alive in 1978, then maybe Halloween wouldn't have impressed me as much as it does. Like, there's something about the passage of time in slasher movies that they get more fun. I mean, yes, there's still the glossiness that I rail against in these movies, but it doesn't bother me as much, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean,
slasher plus time equals an enjoyable viewing.
I agree, and I think that weirdly enough, although I'm not someone who is going to necessarily raise a fist against digital or understand why the studios would move away from producing and processing 35mm and move into digital. I understand that for cost reasons, for speed reasons, and everything else. But there was a certain unifier in terms of film quality when everyone was shooting on either 16 or 35mm. Even the lowest budget film could look, to some extent, just by the nature that it was shot on film, could look quote unquote like a real movie. Do you know what I mean? So when stuff started to be shot on VHS or SVHS in the late 80s, early 90s, and people started making kind of camcorder movies, they definitely have their own charm and they definitely have their own following, especially stuff like video violence and things that have been subsequently kind of made into cult films and released. But there's something to do, if you watch a slasher or if you watch a low-budget horror movie from the 70s and 80s, even a bad one at least looks like it had some money behind it, because the mere nature of having to find and process the film and make it gave it a certain quality. As you get into later films, the difficulty becomes either the quality of film is much glossier and has more money behind it, especially these 90s studio released films. But also, for some reason, they don't feel quite as authentic. But I think you're absolutely right. If you filmed any of the urban legend films in the 80s on either 16 or 35mm, we would be talking about them today as kind of goofy cult classics, even though there's a ton wrong with all three of them.
Yeah. And the thing that the 90s ones had was, like, the hot new actors, you know? And like, you look at, I guess, you know, maybe Friday the 13th Part 4 has a few big names. I know Kevin Bacon's in Part 1, but for the most part, it's unknowns who weren't on the fast track for superstardom either, you know, in those 80s ones. Whereas, you know, you look at Urban Legends and you just know that the studio was like, all right, this is going to be our next Brat Pack or whatever, you know?
Yeah, weirdly enough, I think actually in Urban Legend, the trilogy, maybe more so than Scream, I would agree with you with the Scream franchise, because they're plucking people who are hot on TV and seeing what they would do in movies and thinking that horror movies were kind of a good proving ground for them. And same with I Know What You Did Last Summer. With Urban Legend, the interesting thing is in each of the movies, there are actors who are not yet famous. I don't even think, was Jared Leto on his TV show at that point? He may have been.
I don't know, but I feel like even if they weren't famous, they were like, the powers that be wanted them to be, and were like, here, we're gonna put you here, and they had like a 5 to 10 year plan for each of these actors. You know, Rebecca Gayheart and the main girl from Part 2, you know, who went on to be.
Jennifer Morrison. She went on to be in House and some other stuff. No, I completely agree with you. And what I was going to say is actually what's most kind of unifying of all the 90s slashes is sort of how forced they are to some degree. And I can kind of expand on what I mean by that in a minute. But in terms of the Urban Legend films, and in terms of old slashers, like if you think Tom Hanks got his start in a slasher, Brad Pitt got his start in a slasher, Cutting Class, Kevin Bacon, as we've mentioned, Crispin Glover in Friday the 13th Part 4. You can argue that Corey Feldman was already all over the place doing acting, so him showing up in Friday the 13th Part 4 is just sort of another one of his movies that he's making that year. But still, and there's a rich history, and there's other movies as well I can name, but there's a rich history of actors getting their breaks in horror movies. I think the difference between 70s and 80s and the Urban Legend trilogy is exactly what you're saying. In the old days, a bunch of people went to audition, and either whoever was the cheapest, prettiest, and most available would get the role. Especially because most of those movies that we think of, Friday the 13th and Halloween, and not so much Friday the 13th, but Halloween definitely, and Nightmare to some extent, were all made outside of a studio initially before being picked up and then distributed by a studio. And so it was down to the filmmakers themselves kind of who was picked. The 90s slashers, though, you're right, the studio seems to be kind of forcing. You're very astute when you say, like, the next Brat Pack. They're trying to put together, like, who are going to be the next young, hip teens of the generation. And some they're plucking from TV, and some they're casting in their first movies. I think the Urban Legend trilogy fits more with the 80s model, though, just in the fact that even by the third one, you're getting an actress like Kate Mara doing her kind of first shot on video, straight to video kind of DVD movie, and then would go on to obviously be in big studio films like Fantastic Four and stuff. So there's more of a feeling to me in some of these Urban Legend films of actors kind of doing their first movies, even if they are produced and forced by a studio.
Especially Part 3. I mean, Part 3 just feels like, I don't know the history of it, but it feels like it was just a Bloody Mary movie, and then someone was like, let's put the old Urban Legend stamp on this, you know? Like, it was initially created not specifically for the series, it seems, and I don't know for sure. But
and what's funny about the third one is Urban Legend comes up very quickly as a title, and the title Bloody Mary kind of shoves it out the way.
Yeah, I love that kind of thing. They're like, look, if we put the Urban Legend stamp on it, then it'll be that much more popular, you know? So, any dirty trick. I'm a big fan of dirty tricks.
Yeah, so I think you're definitely right. I think, though, because Urban Legend is sort of the redheaded stepchild of 90s slashers, I think they're more interesting casting-wise, because you are seeing, you know, especially the second and the third one. I was watching both those movies and IMDbing all the actors in it and being like, these guys had careers. How did these guys have careers? You know, it's almost like when you go back and watch Brad Pitt in Cutting Class, you don't sit there and be like, oh, he's going to be the next big thing. You're like, that dude's going nowhere. You know what I mean? And skip forward five to 10 years and you know, he's still the most sought after actor on the planet. So it's kind of miraculous, but especially Urban Legend's final cut, the second one. You're watching all those actors, and all of them have gone on to either TV or film success in some regard, and you just think, how is that possible?
Well, I mean, that's Part 2 is just awful.
Yeah, it's the worst of the trilogy, which doesn't make any sense, but it is.
The After Movie Diner with John Cross will return right after this.
When award-nominated screenwriter Chip Thompson, that's me, hi, was 14, he was mildly obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, comic books, and a whole manner of geeky pop culture. So he decided to write his own series, centering around what it would be like if he and his best friend and co-host MC,
that would be me,
were supernatural crime-fighting ninjas in Tokyo. It was as terrible as it sounds, full of plagiarism, clumsy references, and outright stealing of ideas, mixed with its own unique blend of B-movie horror and superhero plots and ideas. Now, 17 years later, Chip and MC read through each episode of this series, much to Chip's chagrin, brought to life with their unique acting skills. Whether you're a Buffy fan or enjoy the works of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, My Dad Wrote a Porno, The Evil Dead, or you just like to hear a grown man wince at his teenage ramblings, we think you'll enjoy the How I Ripped Off Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast. Available on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube and Stitcher Radio. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com How I Ripped Off Podcast, or on Twitter at How I Ripped Off.
And if you're enjoying this podcast, why not check out aftermoviediner.com for more movie gubbins. Movie gubbins, I hear you cry? Yes, movie gubbins. All sorts of chicanery is happening over at aftermoviediner.com. Not least of which is the Fantastic Fest series from Lisa Gullickson, who has been down in Austin, Texas, sending us back reviews from the heart of Americana for all the movies that she's been watching down at Fantastic Fest in Austin. So that is wonderful. You'll want to go and read those articles. And when you're done with that, why not check out the podcast Lisa is a host of? It's the ItMod podcast and its subsidiary show, the ItMod Chatcast, where they do interviews. But ItMod's fantastic. We had Brad Gullickson on the show last week discussing the Poltergeist series, and Lisa is a regular contributor to aftermoviediner.com. So check out their podcasts, please. All links are available on the site. And on top of everything Lisa's writing for us, we have the Cult Classics series from Michael Campochiaro. We have the Hammer Horror series written from the bloke down the pub, or Jim Wallace, my podcast co-host, as we've now revealed. We have interviews from myself and Aaron Carruthers. We have lots and lots of content on the website and a lot more to come. So please do keep checking back. Make aftermoviediner.com your port in a turbulent storm of social media bullshit. How about that? And instead, fill your belly full of glorious movie goodness. You can also support our show over at patreon.com, patreon.com/aftermoviediner, and all money made from that will be filtered back both into the podcast, our interviews, and the website. So that's patreon.com, patreon.com/After Movie Diner. And don't forget to rate and review us wherever podcasts are found. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, all those good places. Both us and Booth Talk, our interview podcast. Anyway, back to the show.
Should we go in order? Should I save that for a little while?
Yeah, no. We'll definitely go in order. So let's start with Urban Legend 1998. Do you want to do a quick rundown of the plot, sir?
The plot is that we're on a college campus, which I like. I like the feel of the college campus. It's a good vibe. I'm happy. I'm just happy when I'm there, you know? And what's going on? There's a lot going on. People are dying in ways that recreate urban legends, and which is quite I mean, it's so preposterous. But there's also a secret, a deep dark secret on the campus that the dean, somehow only the dean and what's his name, Freddy Krueger.
Robert Englund.
Yeah, only the dean and Robert Englund and the janitor know about. You know,
Yeah.
It happened 30 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's like, how powerful. I know it was kind of pre-internet, you know, or not even, but you know, it was early days of internet, but still, it's like, come on. There's no way they're hiding that secret. But it just follows the main girl.
And you can say what the secret is. I don't mind spoiling this movie of 20. It's now 21 years old, this movie, Matt.
There's it's such a convoluted plot. 30 years ago, there was a massacre at one of the dorms. And, okay, so they're trying to keep it secret,
Yeah.
but they haven't. And they leave the dorm falling apart right in the middle of this otherwise perfect campus.
Right, they leave the tower. Yeah.
The place where it happened is just literally falling apart. It's like, guys, this is the worst cover-up ever.
I know, and it's begging. It's begging for frat boys to break in there once a year and have a party. You know, it's begging for that, and it's. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that's bizarre about Urban Legend. I mean, you can see how it came out. Someone sat down and they were like, all right, if in 7 people are killing each other because of the 7 deadly sins, in this movie people are killing each other because of urban legends. Go to a book of urban legends and pull out the top 10 we could film right now, and then they kind of form a story around it. Interestingly enough, it is filmed at the same university as 1986's supernatural slasher Killer Party, which
big Killer Party.
I'm a big fan of that movie as well. I'm along with you, Matt. I think universities are intrinsically a good place to set a slasher film. Scream 2 is set in a slasher film. It's almost better than the high school. Prom Night is a good one, and Scream 1 is fine, but there's something about that university thing, and I think it's to do with that university is the first time most people are away from their parents or their home. They're figuring out what they want to do. They're having to interact with people from all different walks of life for the first time. Unlike high school, which can be a little cliquey, university tends to be a little bit more mixed. And there's just so much more. Plus, they're adult enough to maybe be, drinking or partying or whatever. It's just a really rich tapestry. I'll never get tired of university set horror films.
Yeah, they did it right. Like, it has that feel. Everyone's bundled up because it's cold, and then they're just hanging out, like drinking coffee and talking. And they didn't like try to like glam it up too much or whatever. Like, it felt pretty authentic, like I guess the party, there's a party near the end where I'm just like, come on, like, parties in movies are just so ridiculously over the top, you know. I haven't been to many parties, but I've definitely not been to any as rowdy as that one. But but there's so much disbelief that we're gonna have to suspend. Like, Rebecca Gayhart's the killer. She's this like waif, she weighs like 108 pounds, and yet throughout the movie the bad guy is like a rugged football player in a hooded coat,
He's at least 6'2". He's able to drag people, like he's able to drag Joshua Jackson up by his neck on a rope and various other things that you wouldn't be able to do. I mean, nothing against, wayfish teenage women. I'm sure they can, bulk up their muscles, but not quite to the extent you would need to in order to be the killer in this movie.
That you would actually like morph into like a different being, every time you start killing. But
it's funny because I kind of felt the same way rewatching Scream 4 recently, where it's revealed that like Julia Roberts' niece or whatever is the killer at the end of it. And I'm like, no, she isn't. She's like 4'2". She'd have difficulty blowing the candles out on a cake, let alone killing a man. And
that just it's like you had to know when you're making it. And I guess you were just like, whatever, it's scarier. It's worth it to just to not do that. But like in the opening scene where so Rebecca Gayhart presumably is recreating an urban legend by hiding in the back seat of a car, and she's like so she's waiting for the stuttering gas station attendant to see her, and she knows that he has a stutter in advance, I guess, because she knows that he won't actually be able to warn the girl, like and I gotta let it go. But if I were making an urban legends movie, like it wouldn't be that, like
well, no, you see, the
series, like in part 3, part 3 is basically almost just the Bloody Mary urban legend. There's at least maybe one or two other that they slip in there, but like if each movie was just one urban legend, I would buy that a little bit better. But anyway, I still love it.
No, I know what you mean. I think that the problem urban legend has is that it comes after Scream, and this need that 90s slashers suddenly felt to reveal the killer Scooby-Doo style. If you have to tie everything back to a single killer, then it's all ridiculous, because if her motivation is revenge or whatever it is, are you really telling me that you would just go to all this bother? Wouldn't you just wait till the person like snuck out of their dorm or whatever and hit them with a brick or something? Like, you would Like, you wouldn't go to a point where you're like, if I get in the back of a car, maybe she'll pull over to a weird, like, mountain rest stop where there's a mad, stuttering Brad Dourif in an uncredited cameo, by the way, the voice of Chucky, Brad Dourif, horror actor.
He was good.
He was
real
excellent.
good.
But, you know, where you'd have to have scoped out the entire gas station, you would have had to have known he was a good enough guy that if he looked in the back window of a car, he would alert the driver. Like, it just, and also, if he can look through the window on a rainy, dark night and see that someone's hiding in the back seat, how did the driver not know that someone was hiding in the back seat? It's all ridiculous, but you go with it because it's glossy and there's rain coming down and Brad Dourif is stuttering and rolling his eyes like a crazy person, and you're going to get swept up in it.
It's fun, but when the big reveal happens, then it's watching it the second time when you're like, wait, now that I know Rebecca Gayheart is responsible for all these crimes, like, come on. But
well, it
like
would
you
make
said,
more sense if you made it a fraternity, like multiple killers, so that they all had decided.
Each of them had one job, one legend to recreate.
Yeah, that would be much better. There's like this weird, you know, brotherhood, sect, fraternity, whatever, and 10 of them say, we're all going to kill someone, whatever. They don't need a reason. It's 1998. You're just serial killers. Get on with it.
By the way, I had college radio shows all through my time in college, and I mean, to imagine that anyone would call into a college radio show, let alone that she just has call after call with this intimacy advice, you know?
Yes.
It's ridiculous, but you know,
that's
Tara
Tara Reid you're referring to there.
Of course, the great
Sharknado's Tara Reid.
Yeah, she does a good job. You know, I like the how they set up the situation with the roommate. You know, that the roommate is engaged in wild behavior and wants the lights out. You know what's interesting to me? Why, like, the main girl is not a freshman. I'm pretty sure, right? She's been there a couple of years, it seems.
Perhaps. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I mean, it might be towards the end of their first year, maybe?
Maybe. Okay, maybe. But for some reason, I got the feeling that she was a junior or a senior. But I could be wrong. But it felt to me she'd been there for a while, and I was like, why did you choose this crazy girl as your roommate?
Well, let me ask you something, Matt. Can you stay on campus for all 3 or 4 years that you're at university?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It depends on the school. You could at mine, at least.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, in the UK, the university I went to, they had halls of residence, but it was only for the first year, and then after that, you had to find your own lodgings off campus. But I mean, I would imagine she's at the end of her first year. She knows her roommate well enough that if she's up to something, she's not going to suspect it. She's just going to deal with it. But she maybe doesn't know her roommate well enough to have picked her as her roommate, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Now, I liked the
roommate, by the way, played by Danielle Harris from the Halloween franchise.
Ah, very interesting. The journalist, Jared Leto, I guess,
Jared
right?
Leto, yep.
It's so fun. I worked for the college newspaper, and it was like, oh, yeah, as if, like, there's, at, like, the New York Times, you don't have journalists who are that, like, wide-eyed and intense about getting a story. It's so hilarious.
Yeah, definitely not anymore, yeah.
such a caricature of what a journalist is. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so funny how and I don't know, because again, obviously not from America, but whenever I've seen an American university film, it seems like whatever class they're in, whether it's theater in the case of Sidney Prescott in Scream 2, or whether it's journalism as the case of Jared Leto in Urban Legend, or even in Happy Birthday to Me, isn't someone in like motor shop or whatever when he gets killed by the bike, or is that just a bike garage? I don't know. But anyway, all the courses you could be enrolled in seem to be entirely professional. Like they are absolutely professional grade, $1 million versions of that job. So if you're in the paper, we were rewatching Veronica Mars recently, and she's in the high school paper, and the high school paper has professional grade cameras and printers and all this stuff, and I'm like, does that really go on in American schools? Do they just have more money than sense?
No, in fact, I performed at Harvard University's radio station back in the spring, and just like the radio station at my school, it was in the basement of a dorm, and
right.
It was just run down and broken and carpeted and stinky. So no, it's only in the movies. And I also I'm like, what is this class that Freddy Krueger is teaching here? Like it's like a class in urban myths where it's such a preposterous come, eat some Pop Rocks and drink it. Like, this is a college class?
Right, well, I mean, I assume it's probably like some far cry from sort of social anthropology or, society or storytelling even. Maybe it's even like an English lit sub-major or something. But, yeah, it's totally...
It's a stretch. It is this big stretch.
Big stretch. But again, what I like about the first urban legend is that they are fully aware what has come before, and it's almost sort of quite a while before the age of remakes that we would enter into. It's one of the first movies in a weird way that is playing so heavily with the nostalgia of the films that have come before, both in its casting, which I suppose Scream did a little bit, but with the Linda Blair cameo and stuff, but with its casting of Robert Englund and its casting of John Neville and its references to Pam Grier movies, which all three of them have, which is amazing for me because I'm a big Pam Grier fan. To, like you say, the casting of the young crowd, all of whom are kind of either became something or on the verge of something or were sort of it people at the time, down to the idea of, well, it has to be a whodunit. We have to have graphic deaths. The deaths all have to be tied together with some random theme. Like, all of it is playing very much from a kind of greatest hits songbook of random slasher tropes.
Yeah, well said. It's also funny, like, the main girl goes through so much, and like still deep into the movie she's witnessed several murders, but she's still just like going about campus, like presumably going to class, sleeping in her dorm room, like, wow.
Her roommate is horrifically murdered while she's in the room. She finds out the next day, and she's still like, well, I guess I'll go back to my room tomorrow. Like, there's no police investigation. There's nothing. There's just the campus security played wonderfully, and I'm gonna have to look up the actress's name now.
The sassy security lady. She is great.
She is great.
She's fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad she was in too, also.
Loretta Devine is the actress's name, and she's awesome. I love that she is a Pam Grier fan. Big props to that. I don't know who wrote that in, and I also don't know who in part 2 and part 3 went, oh, we need to bring back the Pam Grier thing because that'll tie these films together.
It's the only thing linking them together. She's the best part. She's the best part of part 2, also.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yes, of course. Hopefully you know Matt Farley from Moturn Media, and you've listened to the Moturn Media Infomercial Podcast, and hopefully you've checked out all of Matt's albums under his various different band names on Spotify. Well, he has got a new album out which you need to check out yesterday. The fact that you didn't already check it out is a mistake. It is known as Wednesday Night Chronicles by the band Brennan McFarley. That's right, Wednesday Night Chronicles by Brennan McFarley. And we're going to play a track for you now, but it's a fantastic album. Find it on Spotify and Apple Music and Google Play and wherever good music is found. And support Matt Farley of Moturn Media by listening to or purchasing Brennan McFarley's album, Wednesday Night Chronicles.
She's my midnight squeeze, smooth and sweet, candy for a penny. Weep before she sleeps because out of me can't could last days and days. Allergic to rays. I play, but I don't pay. Just too much for us. She's my lady, she's my bitter truth, my sweet lady. She's my dormant noose, I'm bound to serve at the church of her. Don't let me around, don't make that sound. The sidewalk serenade is just something cheap to celebrate.
But yeah, it's quite ridiculous. Now, the first woman who is driving the gas station woman is Natasha Gregson Wagner. And what's interesting about 90s movies is you will see both the studios and independents trying to put Natasha Gregson Wagner, who I believe is Robert Wagner's daughter. You see her being put in a bunch of movies, but she never really makes it. She's in like this, she's in High Fidelity, she's in Two Girls and a Guy, she's in a couple of other things, but like she never became Natasha Gregson Wagner. You know what I mean? Like she was just always...
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the someone that they're like, we're going to make you... We're going to make you something, you know? Yeah.
I am wrong. Hang on a second. Okay, so no, she is not Robert Wagner's daughter. She it was adopted by Robert Wagner before she was even a year old, because her mother, Natalie Wood, so she's also related to Natalie Wood, married Robert Wagner. But her real dad was a British producer called Richard Gregson, hence the double-barreled name. But she's definitely like trading on both her mum and father's legacy, but never really had that breakout role. You know what I mean? Appears in a bunch of stuff you've seen in the 90s, Lost Highway, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, High Fidelity, etc. Never really became the Natasha Gregson.
Kind of what they were hoping. But that's probably what they do. They have a big net filled with 30 potentials. They give a shot to each of them, and some of them make it. Even the ones you didn't make it, though, John, are doing better than you and me.
Oh, what? Hands down, dude. Hands down. Yes, I don't think Natasha Wagner is scrambling for change and hosting a podcast about horror trilogies from the 90s.
When I hear people like on the radio being like, and that was a song from a one-hit wonder. Whatever happened to them? And that one-hit wonder. And then I'm like, wait. The rest of us are no-hit wonders, you know? Like,
yeah, you've written 20,000 songs, and
I got 20,000 non-hits. It's humiliating.
I don't know, sir. I saw that your residency is filling up. There was quite a crowd the other night. So,
yeah. Well, hey, when you put on a free show for people, and the best I can, it's like a huge success to have people not pay to come see me, but one step at a time. Can we? I just want to go through it because it's so convoluted.
Please.
So the plot of Urban Legends is that the girl who dies at the beginning, Robert Wagner's stepdaughter.
Yes.
She and the main girl, okay, right? The two of them, when they were in high school, pulled a prank where they flickered the lights, the old flicking of the lights. No, they have the lights off, and then if someone flicks the light at them, they turn around and chase that person, right?
I do not remember that at all.
In the flashback, the main girl tells the flashback at some point that when she was in high school, she caused a car accident. She and her friend caused a car accident where a guy died.
Yes. Right, they were playing chicken with cars. I'm sorry, when you said flash the lights on and off, I thought it was a room light. No, you're right. With headlights, they were flashing headlights on and off. Yeah. Headlights of a car, playing chicken kind of thing. Yeah.
No, well, the urban legend is if there's a car driving with no lights on, that if you see that, normally you would flicker your headlights to say, hey, turn your lights on. But the urban legend is that it is a gang initiation, and they wait till someone flickers it, and then they turn and chase the car. So that's what they were... what that was.
Yeah, I missed that.
It was an American urban legend.
Okay.
But so they're doing that. They cause a car accident. Okay.
Yes.
And so then, the person who dies in the accident is Rebecca Gayhart's sister, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So that's her motivation to go to track down. First, she tracks down the girl who was driving and kills her. Now, was that girl a student at that school or another school? I could never tell. Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we're two intelligent men, well versed in movie making, and
yes.
It's so confusing. So
it is.
So then Gayhart gets to the school where the main girl is.
Yes.
Okay. And now her plan is to frame the main girl for a bunch of other urban legend deaths. Is that
yes,
right?
Something like that, yes.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
So she killed the girl who was driving in that accident way back. But now the girl who was in the passenger seat, she must get revenge of that girl. And frankly, I mean, the main girl was only in the passenger seat when that happened. She's not even really guilty, right?
Right. And also, if that is the only... Like, if they're the only two people who have wronged you... You killed the first one super easy.
Yes, just kill the second one.
Yeah, done. Revenge, done.
Okay, and meanwhile, there's a campus mystery.
Yes.
That's just completely unrelated.
Yes, completely unrelated. Yes, about
kind of like that.
Yeah.
I'm happy that it's unrelated, but also it's just like wow, like they're piling on. Like we didn't need Robert Englund's secret. Past, you know?
No, we didn't need that, no.
So I just wanted to make sure just that we got down to the nuts and bolts of that story, were there like meetings, studio meetings, when people were just around a table being like, wait, what?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that you simplify this movie by, like I say, making it, you know, some weird fraternity or some weird group of people bumping people off in urban legends. Make the deaths as elaborate and insane as you potentially can. And then at the end have the security guard, like, you know, find them all and bring them to justice or whatever, if you have to have that happen at the end. But, like, that should be the film. The fact that there are two plots, neither which make any sense whatsoever, running concurrently... that all add up to a bunch of, let's be fair, scenes. Like, just scenes. They just all add up to a bunch of scenes. That's it. It's just a bunch of scenes. You know, with a bunch of characters in them, as we've spoken about already, all doing seemingly professional jobs at university. None of them go to any other classes. The journalist guy doesn't go to math class or science class or anything else.
He's just chasing the story.
Just skulking around in his army surplus knockoff jacket and wishing he was Hunter S. Thompson. Meanwhile, the dean of the college, we haven't even spoken about the dean of the college, but the dean of the college, played by John Neville, who the right people will know was Baron Munchausen, but also appeared in the X-Files. As one of the shadowy guys, I think. He has no regard for students, security, sexuality, drinking, none of it. He has no time for any of it. Doesn't he say at one point he's probably off sleeping with a woman, a man, a goat, something? Like, doesn't he? Like, isn't he just completely dismissive of everything?
Yeah.
He revokes
And yet-
the school paper at one point. He's just like, I'm getting rid of it. And he's like, you can't do that. It's the school paper. He's like, I don't care anymore. Leave me alone.
And he cares so little. It's like, dude, why are you protecting this? Why are you maintaining the cover up? You obviously don't care.
Right.
And, like 30 years ago, some people died. Is that really going to affect their enrollment? I don't know. Call me crazy. I think you can let it out. But
Yeah.
But all that being said, it's a fun ride. I'm happy in that world. I have I really, I don't have that many complaints. It's all I've done for the last half hour is complain. But I swear, I've seen it 3 times at least, and I would happily see it again. 3 out of 4 stars.
I've seen it about 3 times as well. I saw it when it originally came out. I revisited it probably a few years later, and then I revisited it this time around. Having watched Scream recently, and my memory of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, I can't say that it. I can't say that it held up quite as much as I wanted it to. I think the problem with my viewing this time is I went into it really hoping that it was this lost gem or this thing that held up much better than I remembered it. And really, it didn't. It definitely shows its age. It definitely doesn't have, as we've talked about, sort of the most cohesive or comprehensive plot. However, it is nice and glossy. The actors in it are all nice and pretty. The deaths are pretty spectacular and well orchestrated. It's quite gory, which is always a pleasure. It's got a great kind of cast of cameos and a cast of future wannabes. It's completely illogical that any of this stuff would be going on, which kind of only adds to the fun of it. So it definitely rollicks along at a pace. Like, there's no point where you're sat around being like, why am I watching this? It's boring. There's stuff happening. There's wind machines, there's rain machines, there's people being killed, there's pretty famous people popping up that you're like, I didn't know they were in this movie. And Rebecca Gayheart and Joshua Jackson, by the way, both in Scream 2, another campus-set horror movie. It's almost like they were really at college, and people just kept coming to the college to film stuff at their college. Joshua Jackson, weirdly, even is in Scream 2 even less than he's in this movie, which has not got to be a vote of confidence. Another interesting thing about this movie is it is directed by Jamie Blanks, who also went on to direct Valentine and the remake of the Ozploitation classic Long Weekend. Sorry. He does the composing, for Long Weekend, and directs it. And what's interesting about the fact that he is both a composer and director is that the director of Urban Legends 2, Urban Legends Final Cut, is also a composer-director. Now, he only ever directed Urban Legend 2, I think, as a director, and maybe one other one. No, Urban Legends Final Cut is the only time he directed. But it's very interesting that the guy who did the score for 1 and 2 also directs, and they are double hyphenates in the fact that they are both composer-directors, although as far as I'm aware, not related or part of the same studio or anything like that. It's just very interesting. You don't hear of director-composers very often, and to have 2 in one franchise seems interesting. But Valentine, you're a fan of Valentine, right?
Oh, yeah. Love me some Valentine. And all those movies are so interchangeable. It's crazy. Just the look and feel of Valentine, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Teaching Mrs. Tingle, Scream, and Urban Legends. Like, it feels like it was just, like it worked for Scream, so let's just keep doing it, Yeah,
and Valentine, I think, has grown in cult status because Scream Factory has just put out a lovely special edition Blu-ray of Valentine, which I don't see happening for the Urban Legend trilogy anytime soon, but we'll wait and see.
Give it time. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. By the way, it turns out we already got there in November 2018 when the Shout Factory released Urban Legend and Urban Legends The Final Cut. However, Bloody Mary has not made it onto a Shout Factory, Scream Factory special edition, but the first two have.
Last thing, part one. So then Rebecca Gayheart has succeeded in her evil. Well, yeah, she's gotten away with it more or less.
Yes.
And now, like, we see that she's now at another school, like under a new identity. We guess, like, is she just there for her education, or is she gonna start? Is she planning to start another spree? What do you think?
I don't know. The only thing that ties the first two movies together outside of the security guard is that Rebecca Gayheart appears in post-credit sequences. So
she's a nerd. Was she studying nursing? At least I hope.
I don't know, but I think what would be amazing is if she had forsaken whatever B-list career she was having in 2005 and returned to make the trilogy and had returned as Bloody Mary, the ghost of Bloody Mary, inferring that somehow Rebecca Gayheart's character is eternal and has somehow willed the urban legend killer into existence.
I would totally buy that, and I loved it. Yeah. Okay, so look, part two, what drives me absolutely nuts. And Quentin Tarantino does it too in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but you at least get the feeling that he knows he's doing it, and he's doing it for an artistic reason. When what I'm getting at is the opening scene of Urban Legends 2
Final Cut.
A movie within a movie.
Yes.
You know, and then it pulls back in a way that it's like, wait, like, it's not like we were in the screening room watching a screening of the movie. No, like, the narration of the film we're watching is in the set. You know what I'm saying? Like, we should have.
What?
There were cuts. There were cuts that we would have seen, and they're just tricking us. I hate that.
Yeah, so what Matt is referring to is that at the very beginning, it feels like you are watching a frat boys on a plane movie where there happens to be a slasher. By the way, no plane has ever looked like that, could ever look like that, would ever look like that, even in the 90s or the early 2000s.
Right.
But because everyone would be told to sit down or they would land the plane and have them all arrested. But
and this is presumably a student movie, mind you. Much like you said, the professionalism of these amateurs is uncanny.
Yeah, but we're watching it as if it's a movie, and as Matt says, so as if there is cuts, as if there are different scenes, as if there are different locations, etc. But when it pulls out, the director is only filming the cockpit scene where she's screaming. So it's as if to say, by the way, here's all the scenes he shot beforehand, edited together perfectly with special effects, lights, and music and everything. But now we're just going to jump to the fact where he's just filming the cockpit scene. It's a conceit, it's a cheat, and I know what you mean. It doesn't really make any sense. If we were only seeing it from sort of one camera's perspective, it would make sense. But
I'll buy that, yeah. And it's like, come on, and like, it's about filmmakers, like. And I know, whatever, it's a silly movie, but it happens in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Leonardo there is acting out that whole scene, and we're seeing cuts and whatnot, and we're not seeing the camera crew, and that made me mad too.
I'll tell you, I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I don't remember that. So that's how much that movie stuck in my head.
I wish that movie was just about Brad Pitt versus the Manson clan. That I would have much preferred that movie.
Yeah, that sequence where he goes to like Bruce Dern's farm or whatever, the film gets going and then immediately stops going after that scene. Anyway, so back to Urban Legend Final Cut. So yes, the problem with opening your movie that way is twofold. First of all, I would much rather be watching that movie. Secondly,
yeah, at least those characters are having fun. The characters in the movie itself are just so down. They're so downer.
So pretentious and depressing and awful, all of them. But secondly, you're then asking me to believe that there is a film school where a film like this would even be possible, where they would have an entire fake plane set, not just a cockpit, but an entire plane set with a bathroom and everything, be able to cover that.
At least 30 extras, you know?
30 extras, blood packs, rain machines, wind machines. Like, you are asking me to swallow a ton of stuff right off the bat with this movie, and already I'm not buying it. And that's problematic. And
it's in keeping with the feel of the whole movie is like just no one cared, you know?
Right.
Like, the problems with part one, you could say the director would say, yeah, I know, but we're going to give everyone a fun thrill ride. Whereas the problems in part two, people were just like, yeah, who cares? You know, like if they were confronted on it, you know?
And so, Folly, I just wanted to point something out. You know how we often talk about being local legends and striving a way to do our creativity away from the powers that be or the studios or whatever. But I tell you what, there is some benefit, and I'm just going to use an example. The writer Silvio Horta, who wrote the first movie, gets a character's credit on the sequel, despite the only character that really returns with any kind of regularity is the security guard person. But that means he's also the first name on the writer's list. So he's getting paid for this sequel. I would have been like, let's change the security guard to some other Pam Grier obsessed person and not pay Silvio Horta any money at all.
Yeah. Well, you hear about that for like The Simpsons, like the best thing you can do as a Simpsons writer is come up with a new character, because then you're set, you know?
Right. Yeah, whoever came up with Mo or Chief Wiggum or whatever is just set for life whenever they appear again in the show. But yeah, so Silvio Horta picking up a check for Legends Never Die, Urban Legends Final Cut. But yeah, we start, we're making a student movie, which is the most expensive student movie that has ever been made. Everyone in this school is ridiculously pretty and pretentious and over the top and awful, and as Matt said before, miserable and dour and not having fun at all. They're all shouting at each other and pretending like they're little posy, arty film directors, and that all they should do is be.
Got to get that Hitchcock Award.
Yeah, you know? got to get that Hitchcock Award at this fictitious university that doesn't exist anywhere. And
think of the budget of that opening scene. You know?
Alone.
College is making this movie with all these extras and all these camera movements. And
not only that, dude, but the twist to the film is that everyone dies in the film. Because the guy who's teaching the class in the film lost out the Hitchcock Award.
To 25 years ago, yeah.
So for 25 years, he's waited for the children of the guy who won the Hitchcock Award to attend the university so he can start this utterly ludicrous revenge scheme. Urban Legend sequel... Again, becoming derailed by needing to unmask a killer, which is totally unnecessary.
So it was, he wanted to get back at the daughter of the man who won the award over him. But also, it just worked out that year, one of the filmmakers was so good that professor wanted to steal his movie, right?
Yes. He wanted to attribute a shitty movie to that kid, so that that kid got kicked out of college, and instead he is going to steal his movie, and that at whatever age he is at this point, that's going to be his ticket into Hollywood. This movie, this kid,
this like 50-year-old guy is like, hey, look, I made this this teen. No, wait, was that guy the plane? That plane movie at the beginning, was that movie, or was it a different one?
No, the plane movie is the one made by the Hack director, the kind of like over-the-top, pretentious, dark glasses wearing Hack director. No, it's the guy who wears the like knitted sweater, who's locked himself away in the edit suite and is doing all the score and directing and editing all himself, all within that little edit suite. The one that Jennifer Morrison has a crush on. The one whose twin brother shows up. Like, that's amazing.
Wow. They held nothing back. I saw this movie in the theaters.
Really?
John.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. What a badge of honor. I'm really
Yeah,
proud.
what a I don't even know where to begin with this film. There are so many scenes in it that are absolutely ludicrous, but we can rattle off a few.
Bad. It's not memorable. Not memorable. All the in part one, you kind of know what each character is all about. In part two, it's like they're all filmmakers, I guess.
Yeah.
And
What about? Oh, I have a cinematographer for you, and it's some like German guy in a leather jacket with.
He's just working for free.
With his own, like he's got a roll neck, he's got his leather jacket, he's got his funny little sunglasses, he's got his own like 35mm camera. He talks in like this exotic accent, and it's like, what's he doing?
It's like it would have been much more interesting if it was realistically portrayed just a couple of films. Like the people making the movie, many of them probably went to film school. They know what it's actually like to be 20 and trying to make a student movie. And it's like, I don't know, like it would have been much more charming and enjoyable if it were in any way realistic instead of trying to be like cool. I
mean, there is definitely room for a slasher film that is set around some students making an independent movie in the way of your Paperboy or Sammy or whatever, like, or even
Super 8.
So yeah, like a Super 8 or a 16mm or something like that. Like they're making like this little movie.
No, the movie Super 8. Remember the movie Super 8 about aliens, about a bunch of kids making a movie and then aliens come.
Yeah.
That movie, by the way, I loved it until the aliens came. I was like, oh, bunch of characters making a movie. This is so fun. And then, they're fighting aliens. Oh, what a shame.
But you do know that your future probably lies in making a movie where you and Charlie are making Freaky Farley 3 or something, but really you're being stalked and killed by a slasher, so it's a movie within a movie. So you're making Freaky Farley 3, but then there's a slasher killing off the cast of Freaky Farley 3 in order to make his own sequel or something.
It's inevitable. One thing I've ever said about these kind of movies is like, if the characters were intelligent, the movie would only be about 20 minutes long. Like the problem would be solved much more easily. So like I've often envisioned like a 2-3 hour long epic movie where like just for like 25 minutes in the middle it's a horror movie, but then the rest of it just follows the lives of the characters. That's on my list of movies to make.
Oh, okay, I see. So what you're saying, like a killer shows up, and instead of, I don't know, either believing it's a movie or only telling the campus security guard who doesn't believe you because she's too busy watching Pam Grier movies,
right,
or whatever.
It's all reasonable stuff happens.
You go to the police, the CSI guys show up. They go, it's clearly this guy, and they arrest him. And then the rest of the movie is just people being like...
They don't even talk. It's just one chapter. It's just one chapter in the life of the main character. That happened. And then it's like, it follows his career.
Well, I don't know. Have you ever had this thought, Matt? Like, we all take for granted movies' timelines, right? Especially movies like horror movies that normally take place over 2 or 3 days, and we always just assume, fine, it happened in 2 or 3 days. But whenever you step out of it and you go, wait, all that happened in 2 or 3 days, like, do you know what you would have to do to plan and enact and make all this shit happen in 2 or 3 days? And then the lead character in that movie is like, that was the 3 of the weirdest, most fucked up days of my entire life. How do you ever top that,
Oh, I know, and it's rare. It's rarely acknowledged by the characters. I would like it to be more.
I would like it to be more acknowledged. But I would love to see a movie about an indie film students really making a movie like you would make in college and then getting bumped off. That would be far more interesting. However, the killer in this, or who is also the teacher, because essentially the rim shot joke at the end of this movie is those who can't do teach, is Hart Bochner. Do you know what famous character in movie history that he will be forever iconic for, sir?
Tell me.
He is in Die Hard. He plays the bearded guy at the beginning, Ellis, although his full name is Harry Ellis, who is the guy who says Hans booby when they're talking on the walkie-talkie with John McClane, and John McClane's like, Ellis, he's no friend of yours, and da-da-da-da-da, and then he gets shot. That is
Nice.
Hart Bochner, and his claim to fame, he will forever be Ellis from Die Hard. It was
me.
Sorry?
To me, he'll always be the professor in Urban Legends.
Of Urban Legends Final Cut. So can we just talk about the scene that had me howling with laughter because I could not believe anyone filmed it, then watched it back and went, sure, that could go in the movie, and then put it in the movie. So the concept on paper works very well. The concept on paper is we're in this ridiculously elaborate film studio college thing where they would have 75 prop guns. They have a whole rack of prop guns. Yeah. No, they wouldn't, but let's make that leap anyway. They have a whole rack of prop guns, which in itself is a minefield on a campus, on a university campus. Even with prop guns, that's ridiculous. You would never have that. But anyway, a whole wall of prop guns, and it has been set up casually earlier in the movie that our security guard, who is returning from the first one, has a gold-plated gun in the style of Foxy Brown. And her gun gets knocked out of her hand at the same time as they're wrestling with a killer, and all the fake guns go on the floor, right? So the sequence is... The only two people in the room who know about her gun are the security guard and Jennifer Morrison's character, and Jennifer Morrison has to get to the real gun before everyone else. But what it leads to is all four characters scrabbling around on the floor for what seems like way too long a time. And there's no music or anything. It's just...
the music should be like...
It's hilarious because it's exactly like, but it's not even like a slapstick routine of like a guy's glass eye falls out and a jar of marbles tips over, and then they have to try and get at the marbles, but then they're falling over the marbles or whatever. Which, by the way, is an excellent scene. You should do that. But it's not even that funny. It's funny because of how ineptly it's filmed, edited, and put on the thing. It's not even a slapstick setup. It's just literally they've told four actors to get on their knees and scrabble around in fake guns. And for some reason, that sequence just had me howling with laughter. That and the German or Norwegian cinematographer showing up. I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah, it was weird when that guy got killed, when he goes out, I guess, for a smoke or whatever, and gets killed, and it's on the security cameras. When she then grabs the tapes and watches them, I guess the special effects are just bad because Did you notice it? The punches didn't even seem to land.
No.
Did you see that, or is that just me?
I did see that. No, you're right. Him hitting him with his own lens.
It made me think that that it was even though I'd seen it before, I had forgotten who the bad guy was. It made me think that people weren't really dying; it was just being faked to drive the girl crazy.
Right now, I had not seen this one before. And I thought they were going to April Fool's it. I thought that was the whole point. Like the movie April Fool, which, famously peed everyone off because they got to the end and when they were suddenly wait, people aren't really dead. I thought that's what this was. I thought they were going to do it so that when it pulled out at the very end, the whole thing had been for a film. Like a guy had decided, I want real fear on camera, so I'm going to fake kill these people. I thought that was going to be the reveal, and then I was really disappointed that wasn't the reveal.
It's almost as if they shot it with that in mind, and then we're like, no, we'll just trim a couple scenes out and do this new ending.
Because the reveal being that he really wanted to win a Hitchcock Award. It's so
it's like, hey,
stupid.
buddy, just because you didn't win the Hitchcock Award doesn't mean you can only be a professor at this college. Like, get out there and make your movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Get out. Like, he gave up so easily, and then just was stewing for 25 years waiting for his nemesis to have a daughter. So, yeah, it's
not only that, a nemesis who we find out has died young, leaving his daughter really upset. So his nemesis has already not had a particularly great life. I mean, yes, he was a lauded documentary filmmaker, but beyond that, he's not a good father, and he's passed away, and she's racked with issues over that. So the family's already ruined. None of this needs to happen.
Yeah. Come on, Professor. And it's funny, like when the girl's like, I have an idea for a script. He's like, what is it? What if a bunch of urban legend murders happen? I feel like any real college would be like no, that's so not not erudite, or learn, but I don't want to talk about this movie anymore because it's real bad.
It is.
And then that twist at the end where Rebecca Gayheart is the nurse. It's just so many wait, what is? She's a nurse now?
Yeah.
What?
And
what?
He's still alive, and none of it makes any sense.
Yeah. But he's like a drooling mental patient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
He didn't win the Hitchcock. It's all bizarre. The thing that's most bizarre is really, and a lot of people will say bad acting or whatever. They'll say, I've said it that I don't think Tom Hardy's a very good actor, for example. But when I say bad acting, I'm not talking like, oh, I think Tom Hardy is not as good as everyone cracks him up to be. I'm talking about catastrophically bad acting. The kind of acting where you watch it and you go, how any of these people ever had a career before or after this film is mind-boggling. The fact that I looked it up on Snopes, but it's absolutely true. People will always say that only 20% of the Screen Actors Guild is working at any given time, so don't bother being an actor. A lot of people use that as kind of cautionary tale, but it's absolutely true. In terms of having to pay dues, you have to be earning only over $16,000 a year, and 70% of the Screen Actors Guild do not currently earn over $16,000 a year, or something along those lines. But I looked it up, so it's absolutely true. But what makes me laugh is that means that these actors in this movie beat out 70% of the Screen Actors Guild. How ridiculously bad, stupid, ugly, awful, backwards do the rest of the Screen Actors Guild have to be for Jennifer Morrison to have a career? That's maddening.
Yeah, well, it's quite fascinating. Yeah, and who knows what kind of devilish deals people have to make to get their big breaks.
Also, the director has got to be like, wait, I have Eva Mendes in a cameo. Can't we make her the main person? Why are we watching Jennifer Morrison?
I liked her. Thank God, though, John, for Urban Legends 3, Bloody Mary.
Yes.
Because it redeems the whole gosh darn, what's it called? Trilogy.
Yeah,
out of nowhere,
does.
direct video by the director of what did she direct? She directed some 80s stuff, right?
She is most famous. Mary Lambert, the director of Urban Legends, Bloody Mary, is most famous for Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2.
Okay.
From the 80s. Yeah. I thought she was one of the women involved in the Slumber Party Massacre series in the 80s, but she wasn't. Her famous one is Pet Sematary.
And
but she's a music video director. She's done a lot of Madonna and Prince and various other people's stuff.
Yeah, and she does. This movie, this is much lower budget, and it has all the charm of a low budget movie, and the look is not quite so glossy. And I like that it takes place in Utah because there's just this openness about it, Yeah. And it reminded me of Silent Night, Deadly Night, the first one, which was also, I'm pretty sure, filmed in Utah. It just that look, the snow-covered vast openness of the landscape. So
yeah, and was it really? Did you look it up? Was it really filmed in Utah?
Yes, according to IMDb, for what it's worth.
Okay, because the other two were both Canada, I believe.
Yeah, but the other two just felt like standard Hollywood movie taking place in standard location, whereas this one had a little personality behind the location. And like we said, Kate Mara, early in her career, wasn't a star, and she does a good job. She's pleasant and good, but she doesn't feel glossy or anything. Do you see her sister was in there briefly?
Yep, Rooney Mara, the girl with the dragon tattoo, would show up as a classmate, right? She's just in the classroom or something?
Yeah, she's in the science class or whatever. Yeah. And now, I don't know the history. Do you know the history? Because, like I said, it felt like the initial concept was not linked to urban legends, but maybe that's not the case. But it's definitely going in a different direction. It doesn't have the sassy security guard. It's not on a college campus. It's a very different kind of movie, huh?
Yeah. So originally, So originally there was going to be a fourth part, and that was released separately without the Urban Legends moniker. I've got a feeling, though, that there's something, I did read up on it, there's something to do with the script of the original script of this one or something. No, that might be something else. Ignore that. That's Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 4. Ignore that. This was... I don't read anything here that says that this was intended as anything other than an urban legend film. What I think probably happened, judging by the movie, because I know where you're coming from, it seems like it's had the urban legend thing tacked onto it. I think probably what it was is that the writers of the movie probably just wanted to tell their own story, and the studio was like, fine, but you have to tack urban legends onto it, and everyone involved was like, fine, whatever, to get this movie made. But what's interesting about Urban Legends Bloody Mary is, first of all, it's a complete hodgepodge of a bunch of different horror movies. The closest is Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, which has the same storyline of a Spectre prom queen coming back to avenge her death at a prom back in the 60s. It obviously is also referencing and even admits to stuff like Candyman and things like that. There is a sequence where bugs crawl out of a woman's face, which has happened in multiple other horror movies, but most similarly, The Believers with Michael Sheen, and also obviously is it Slumber Party Massacre 2 or Sorority House? It's Slumber Party Massacre 2 with the rock and roll killer with the drill. A woman gets an enormous zit, which then grows and grows and grows and pops her entire head. So there's lots of like throwback stuff like that in it. But the other interesting thing about it is how, even though you're right, it first of all, it goes to a supernatural place. It's not a whodunit in the same way, although there is a slight whodunit element to it, although you see it coming a mile off. It's the fact that they try and tie it to Urban Legends 2. They do it with the sequence they most do it with the sequence in the motel room, where one of the characters it has the urban legend of humans can lick too. When your hand is trailing off the bed, you think it's your dog licking your hand. Yeah. The dog is strung up in the bathroom, and then you find out that a human being has been licking your hand, or a monster or something. Not only was that referenced in the film within a film in Urban Legend 2, but while he's in the motel room, he is supposedly watching porn, and the porn that's on the TV screen is actually the dream sequence sex scene from Urban Legends 2 re-edited and redubbed. But it's exactly that footage from Urban Legends 2 where she has the dream about sleeping with his brother. So there's this weird Urban Legends 2 connection in the middle of Urban Legends Bloody Mary, and the Pam Grier thing. It's this. I love that they tied it to the other two films. I love that they didn't just go, let's just slap a name on it. I actually like that they tried to give it some sort of through line. Oh, and don't they mention the college as well when they're going through the paper clippings? She brings up the story from the college from the first one, I think. I didn't
notice. That's cool. I just have a good time hanging out with this girl and her twin brother, and
another twin.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Another connection. It's like I feel, even though people are dying, I never really felt like much was at stake, in the movie. No,
nothing's really at stake. I guess the big thing that's at stake is his mayoral candidacy? Is her father running for mayor?
Stepfather, I guess, but yeah.
Stepfather is running for mayor. So that's what's at stake.
Yeah, will he win? Will he not win? It's not even believable when he shows up at the graveyard that she would find any solace in his arrival. Like, come on, this guy is sleazy. She doesn't like him. The brother doesn't. How about the brother joking with the mom? Like, just because I have like a dead prostitute from Tijuana doesn't mean I was in Tijuana. And the mom's laughing. I'm like, what? Send him to his room.
Yeah, well, earlier in the movie, they laugh about her new breasts as well, which is completely bizarre.
Oh, is it that mom? I didn't even realize.
I thought so. Also, how about the two friends who are at the beginning, where they're setting up the whole Bloody Mary thing, then disappear for like the whole movie? And then there's a sequence in the middle where they actually show up, and one of the actresses says, "I haven't seen you in forever."
It's like. That's what when I say there's not a lot at stake. I mean, she was kidnapped and drugged and left in some, and we never even see the room that they're left in. I think, right? Like someone mentions, like, how hard was it to climb out that little window? It's like that is a major traumatic event. You don't see it happen on screen,
right?
And just like in the first Urban Legends, where the girl's still hanging out in her dorm room after that murder and still seemingly going to class, it's just like. Yeah. Life goes on. Life goes on for these people.
Well, also, we've got the two storyline thing happening, because you've got these frat kids in present day are just hazing people's daughters by kidnapping them, drugging them, by the way, drugging them with Rohypnol, locking them away for like multiple days. And they would have been locked away for more days had they not escaped through a small window, right? So, so that's going on. But at the same time, the father, who's running for mayor, doesn't want another 30-year-old crime. To be discovered. So instead of just going to the school where he left the body and getting the body out of the trunk in the attic, he's killing children.
It does not. I guess in keeping with the trilogy,
it makes no sense.
Not, no sense scrutinizing any of these movies.
No.
But
this one
strange.
is more
Didn't
fun.
You have a good time watching it?
I did, but I had a good time watching it because I thought that the kill sequences and the audacity of some of the ghost sequences were more than I was expecting from everything else in the movie. So everything else in the movie is pretty shot on video, straight to DVD, mid-2000s, expect to see it on the Sci-Fi Channel next week type stuff. However, when you get the kill sequences and the horror stuff and the ghost Mary crawling around and attacking people, it's genuinely more horrific and suddenly grows a pair of B-movie, fun romp horror testicles and goes balls to the walls with them, especially the woman dying with the bugs crawling all over her and peeling her face off. That was amazing, and worthy of a Poltergeist. In fact, we covered Poltergeist last show, and I was saying if only there was more stuff like that in parts 2 and 3 of Poltergeist, and here it was. It was lurking in Urban Legends Bloody Mary. Who knew?
Yeah. And again, usually, I know direct to video, like it looks cheaper, obviously, but I like it better. I feel so much more cozy in this world than I do, especially in compared to part 2. There's.
The only thing bad about this movie is the editing. The editing is really poor, and a lot of the, we didn't shoot enough stuff here, so let's just fade through to the next scene effects are kind of very TV-like. But outside of that, I'm going to agree with you, because much like Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, I'm more likely going to put this one in than I am either of the other two again,
and
which is weird,
the hippie, right? the adult hippie lady, when they're at the graveyard watching the climactic whatever, like the shots of them looking, it felt like they just had 2 minutes. Like, oh, we gotta quick, just stand there and look. And they're like, what are you looking at? Don't worry, just look. And action. Good. Look. Keep looking. Good.
Yeah.
Look some more. And cut. Perfect. Yeah. Right. But it was good. And at the end, the hippie lady was like, no one's going to believe this, huh? Or something.
No. Right. And again, I really wish it was about Tina Lifford, who plays Grace Taylor, the hippie lady in the film, and not about Kate Mara playing Samantha Owens. Because I have to say, if there is because the guy running for mayor is pretty weak as well. But he also looks genuinely like someone's dad and not like an actor at all. So I can only assume he was like hanging around some summer stock theater in Utah, and she was like, he'll do. But Kate Mara, along with Jennifer Morrison from Part 2, is sadly one of those actors that you look at and you just think to yourself, no way would she ever have a career. Cut to her being in Fantastic Four and House of Cards and a bunch of other movies. She's in Shooter, and is she in an X-Men movie? And she's in Brokeback Mountain, and you're just like, really? That woman? All right, I guess
she's a product of two billionaire families. She has no desire to be in this film. Who knows if that helps land good gigs, She's the product of the Rooney family, which owns the New York Giants.
She is? Who's she?
Oh, no. The Rooney family, which owns the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Mara family, which owns the New York Giants. Yeah, so they're doing.
Oh wow!
They're doing darn
I'm
well
looking at that. They also own Timothy Rooney also owned Yonkers Raceway.
Yeah.
And her grand uncle was the Steelers chairman, Dan Rudy. And former U.S. ambassador to Ireland. All right, how about that? I've been the former U.S. ambassador to Ireland, and now I'm buying
Urban
a football
Legends,
team.
Other than part 2, I'd happily sit and watch either one of those other ones again. And I'm sure I like them better now than I would have liked them. I didn't even see part 1 until like a couple of years ago. I saw part 2 before I saw part 1. And so I was pleasantly surprised after the depths of part 1, depths of part 2. That's a good way to go into it. Watch part 2, just be totally disappointed, and have no standards, and then watch part 1 and 3 and be like, you know what? Compared to part 2, they're not so bad. It's not like you need to watch them in order.
Well. No, exactly. Part 1 and Part 3 have the same principle behind them, which is we're making a horror movie. In Part 1, we're making a glossy studio horror movie that is to go on the coattails of I Know What You Did Last Summer. In part 3, they're like, we're just making a horror movie. Yes, it's tied to urban legends, but we're making a horror movie. So the acting and the writing in between the horror scenes don't matter as much as staging a good horror scene. And yes, we're low budget, but we're going to try and do that as best we can with a mixture of practical and CGI effects. And they, for the most part, am successful with the horror scenes. And the in-between scenes you don't really mind sitting through if the horror scenes deliver, which has always sort of been my rule. Like we were saying at the beginning of the show, if you're seriously going to go back to the 70s and 80s and tell me that all the acting and writing in between the kills that everyone enjoys is really the best it can be, then you're a liar. And I'm not saying you, I just mean people in general, because as we all know, we watch those movies for the audacity of the horror and not necessarily great acting. So taking that in mind, Part 3 knows exactly what it is. It's a low-budget horror movie. When the horror is happening, make sure it is at least horrific or at least fun. And when the horror isn't happening, try and get to the next horror sequence as quickly as possible. And this movie does that, but you have to be aware that if the Sci-Fi Channel made slasher films in the mid-2000s,
the two of us together make
this would
big
kind of
slasher
be
fans, because the murders are the least interesting part to me. I like the between the murder moments, and in part one and part 3, between the murder moments, the characters are pretty likable. You know, like. It's not like
Sure, okay, I'll give you that. I mean, I'm not that interested in Kate Mara. I mean, if she was stabbed in the eye, it wouldn't bother me. But I know what you mean. Yes, there's at least stuff going on that I'm interested in.
I'm fine. But in part 2, it's all characters that I hate having conversations with each other, and that there's just nothing likable about the people in part 2. But whereas I like most of the people. Yeah, I didn't really like Joshua Jackson very much in part 1, but the main girl was likable enough. She wasn't in part 1.
No, I agree with you, and sort of not to go back on what I said too much. I was using what I was saying about horror movies from the 70s and 80s in an example to say that the filmmakers behind urban legends, Bloody Mary, know what they're making, so they know where to put most of their efforts. Not to say that I don't enjoy the bits in between. Friday the 13th part 4, which we mentioned earlier. I love all of everything that's kind of going on in there, and all the goofy characters and the twins and the family, the 3 blonde women across the road, and I love the kid who's into all I've forgotten his name because my brain's gone for the moment. Corey Feldman, who's doing like the Tom Savini clone kind of thing, and I love all of that as much as I love the kills. So I don't mean necessarily for me. I just meant when making a horror movie, there are certain things that you should focus on and get right.
I totally
and I
understand.
just mean that Bloody
if it's
Mary
a horror
does
movie,
that.
there's
not
expectations
necessarily
of horror,
my personal taste.
and they
Do you know what I
deliver
mean by
that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I thought the motel kill was gruesome and fun. I thought that the prom queen pimple turns into spiders, rips her face off sequence was super great. What were some? Those are the 2 I'm thinking of. What were some of the others?
I watched it like 4 hours ago. I can't think of any.
I'm talking.
It's funny you bring up Prom Night 2 because it does, even the look of it, for some reason, it has the look in the very Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2. Who would expect that to be an influence on anything, you know?
Yeah, there's no... Listen, people find influences in the best possible places, and Mary Lou Prom Night 2 is one of the best places you can find influences. I'm just disappointed that Kate Mara didn't have a possessed talking rocking horse. Had she had that, that would have really cemented this. I'm having difficulty thinking of the other murders, but I know other people died because they... Oh, this is the other thing that I loved about this movie. Tanning bed, right, which I've also seen somewhere before. I think it's in the first Trances movie. He gets locked in a tanning salon. I don't think he dies, but it's in there. But this was the other thing. The thing I loved about this movie, which is not necessary at all, but they kept showing the funerals. No slasher film ever does that, but they keep, like, people in this town keep getting killed, and then they keep going to the funerals. Like, every other week there's this funeral for, like, one of these dead kids. And you never see that in movies. What movie,
good
even
for them,
Scream,
breaking the mold,
where it takes
but
place over
otherwise,
multiple
life
days,
goes on.
nobody goes to
life
a funeral.
Goes on in town. Yeah. So, I'll take it. Urban
Life
Legends
always goes on. That's the story of this film.
It definitely, you can feel the influence of Scream, though, in parts 1 and 2. Like, Scream really launched a lot of clones. You know, Valentine also, and Gossip, too, I think fit into that feel, sort of.
Well, I also like... in 90s slashers, just to kind of talk generally now about them, what I like about 90s slashers is that they follow the same... They're aware of their 80s counterparts, but they follow the same way. So in other words, just as Black Christmas and Halloween led to Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine, April Fools, New Year's Evil, etc., Silent Night, Deadly Night. In the same way, Scream, which was the quote-unquote revolutionary slasher of the 90s, which in the same way... So Halloween, whenever people mention about Halloween, they always say, Black Christmas did the point of view killer first, right? They always talk about that as like the slasher before the slasher. So the holiday slasher before Halloween made it big and made it popular. And Scream has the same thing. If you watch Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was the only other Nightmare on Elm Street film he came back for, it is a meta horror movie. It comments on horror movies. And yes, okay, by the end of it, it's just a traditional horror movie, but it is one of the first horror movies to comment on horror movies. Just like before Blair Witch, there was The Last Broadcast and various other movies. So, like, you have New Nightmare. That leads the way for Scream, which is the huge franchise, just in the same way that Black Christmas led to Halloween, which is the huge franchise. And then you have I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legends and Valentine and Cherry Falls and all these other movies, which are in the same way and in the same vein that they did in the 80s. And maybe in a smaller way and for a lesser period of time. But I still love that. That once something was successful, a bunch of people jumped on it and did it, and not in always a big studio way, in a small low budget way, in a studio but not a big picture kind of way, like a B studio picture.
That's
like
right.
Lots
and
of different ways.
All the slashers coming out right now,
I think there's
just,
lots to enjoy
wait
in 90s
20 years
slashers.
and give them a watch. I don't know. There must.
Are there
There's
slashers
movies
coming out right now?
I was just flipping through Tubi, the Tubi app on my TV. It had 1,500 horror movies. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they loaded them up, and they all have advertising
ads,
in them,
like,
so
oh,
it's like
is
watching them on USA Up All Night or whatever.
And
you
River
even get
Beast
the adverts.
was number 1,326 in the list of horror movies, so that was exciting for me.
Oh, nice. Yes, everyone who has the Tubi app, go after you've listened to this and watch Don't Let the River Beast Get You, which is Matt Farley and Charlie Roxburgh's epic
Happy Halloween,
monster
everybody.
movie. It is quite the watch, and everyone should go see it. Indeed. Well, Matt, that was a wonderful trawl through the Urban Legend franchise. I hope everyone thinks we did it justice and we didn't forget anything. Such a rich,
someone's
weird little pocket
do
of
this.
films.
If it
wasn't
I
for
highly
people
recommend.
like us,
I highly recommend 1 and 3. If you watch if you're watching horror movies a lot in October, you could do a lot worse than Urban Legends 1 and 3.
And when I found out that like part 3 was a straight-to-video 5 years later tack on the name type sequel, I was not expecting very much. And probably the best way to go into
really
it is not to expect very much. I feel like we've talked it up, but we enjoyed it. Faint praise. I did like the montage, like you say. You don't see her locked away in the house by the jocks. Instead, you see a montage of her mother by the phone, which is that to me is Motonism. Like, that's Moton filmmaking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of having the murder, let's just cut to
I'm not above that.
police chief or McGee in his yard or something like that.
Yeah.
No, you should do a whole movie where none of the murders are seen.
Who wants to see some girls in some dark dungeony place trying to escape, you know? I'd rather see the mom and the brother. The brother was hanging out on the couch, too, in some of those cuts, right? They're all kind of dissolving into each other.
Yeah.
It's funny how when she came back, they showed it through the reflection of the TV. Where, like, you think it's going to be that she's, like, he's imagining it, but it really was her, you know?
So just lastly, very quick, sorry, but Killer Workout was another horror movie that I remember seeing where there was a death by a sun tanning bed. And as I hinted at before, there was a 4th part intended called Ghosts of Goldfield, which did get made and released, but it is not an official part of the Urban Legend franchise. They removed the name Urban Legend from it, and it does not in any way reference the other 3. So it is not considered. I did look at it, and I did think, should we watch that as well? But no, it is not considered official.
I think maybe next year we should get back together,
in 2007,
because people are going to want to hear our take on Ghosts of Goldfield. So I am available to discuss it next year if you'll have me.
Yeah. Anytime, Matt. Anytime. This was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and please tell everyone where they can find you and what they should be doing right now to help and support you.
The only place worth finding me are all my appearances on the After Movie Diner. Dig deep into the gosh darn catalog that John Cross just graciously gives to all of us. You know, if he doesn't happen to have an episode this week, just search in the archives. How many episodes?
I think we're almost up to 300. I think this is 294 or something, I think.
And some of these episodes are like 3+ hours long, so there's a treasure trove of excellence. So dig deep into the After Movie Diner. Yeah, that's my plug.
This episode is going to be episode 294, and if you go to my Spreaker page, you will see that I have recorded over 849 hours worth of podcasting. Now, that includes the 100 episodes of Dr. Action, all of which are commentary shows, so they're all over 2 hours long, because they're obviously commenting over movies. And it also includes my 30-plus Booth Talk podcasts, which are interviews with people. But even so, there are 293 episodes of the After Movie Diner you could go and be listening to. And if you do the maths, I think it turns out that
35 days.
849 hours would be 35 days. You wouldn't be able to eat, sleep, or do anything else. You would just have to listen to my show, but it would take you just over a month.
Get to work, people. Get to work.
Yeah, you have fans who are listening to all 20,000 of your songs, right?
I have a fan, but yes.
No, someone already did it, though. This is the second guy to do it.
Oh, true. Yeah, okay, yeah. So this will be the second guy to do that, and it's great. It's so exciting, and he's keeping me posted on it. It's pretty wild, and I'm keeping tabs on him to make sure he doesn't lose his mind.
Does he listen to all the name songs as well, like the 1,500 name songs?
He does, because he's noticing little things. If I cough in the middle of a song, he's taking notes. If my phone rings, he's taking notes. So he's listening, and he's texting me and pointing out really little moments that I was not aware of. So it's pretty cool.
Well, Matt, listen, they can all keep their Hollywood studio union supported paychecks, and they can keep all of the fans that they may or may not have from these movies. No one in Hollywood is getting someone watching every single tiny thing they've ever done and keeping notes on them and tweeting them daily. That's not happening for anyone. So
I got that guy, this one guy from Florida, and that's all I need.
Yeah, that's all you need, Chief. That is fame and fortune right there. Well, thank you so much, you local legend, for being on the show, and we will talk again soon. Best of luck with everything, Moturn, sir, and can't wait till next year. This time next year, when we'll be discussing, a little later, but this time next year when we'll be discussing Metal Detector Maniac.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you go. There's the podcast. Wasn't that fantastic? Don't forget to check out moternmedia.com. That's MOTERN media.com, as well as listening to the new Brennan McFarlane album, which is Wednesday Night Chronicles. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on Google Play, it's wherever tunes are found. Go listen to the Brennan McFarlane album. Here's another cut from it, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Don't mean to stay, I did the opposite. Listen for a train, so I can hop on it. North, west, east, south, doesn't really matter. I'm heading out like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Don't want a slice of the pie. I'm standing up to the good old guys. They opened up the door, I slammed it shut. Enough, no more, I'm gonna trust my gut like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Bend and bend till you're upside down. No thanks, I'm not sticking around. No vote, no vote, no note to misquote. 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 Anybody in the know won't be shocked. Any of those who've been around the block, of course I'd see right through their talk. And soon enough I'd be taking a walk like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. It's kinda like a smell, something stinks. I can just tell, got some instincts. I gotta stay right, not make nice. Always ready to sacrifice like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Like an outlaw. Bend and bend till you're upside down. No thanks, I'm not sticking around. No vote, no vote, no note to misquote. 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 Tell me to stay, I do the opposite. Looking for a train so I can hop on it. No